This week on the BackTable podcast.
I feel like when I got back into work as a fellow and a little bit as an attending as well, like I had to really address, like, well, what are my priorities? And the answer for me was like, I got to pump because I have to feed this kid and I feel like I'll die if I don't. So that was priority number one. And then priority 1.5 was like, you got to finish out your education because this is the only time you're going to get to do it. As an attending, it's like, well, you got to take care of these patients. So keep everybody safe, right? If you have ever trained with me or around me, that is my number one catchphrase is like, well, whatever you're going to do, is that going to keep that patient safe? Yes, then fine, proceed. But I think that reframing that priority and keeping it fresh in your forefront of your brain as you're coming back helps to cut through a lot of the other emotional burden that comes from just becoming a new parent or coming back as a multiple child parent.
So I'm your host, Dr. Helen Bernie from Indiana University. Welcome to this BackTable SWIU episode where I'm very excited to introduce our guest today, a phenomenal physician and a good friend of mine, Dr. Danielle Velez. Now, Dr. Velez is the Director of Men's Health and an Assistant Professor within the Division of Urology at Rutgers Robert Wood Johnson Medical School. How's it going, Danny?
It's good. It's so good to see you. It's weird that, we're not in person at the meetings and stuff, but it's so good to see you.
I know, I've missed you. Oh my gosh. So I am so thrilled to have you join for today's episode because today we're going to dive into a topic that's really deeply personal for many physicians, returning to work after parental leave.
Oh, yeah.
Right? This is something that isn't talked about openly sometimes in medicine, but it really impacts nearly every physician who becomes a parent. And that transition back can really be one of the most complex and emotional periods in our careers, balancing patient care, pumping schedules, OR time, sleepless nights, childcare logistics, and most importantly, really the evolving sense of identity as both a physician and a parent. And it can be emotional, it's logistically challenging, and it comes with a lot of self-doubt and pressure to get back to normal or whatever that means. So we're expected to, jump back in at full speed, rounding, operating, teaching, leading, while still really navigating those deep emotional shifts that kind of come with being a new parent.
Yeah.
And yet, for most institutions, there's very little structured support or really a conversation about how to make that transition sustainable and humane. So today we're going to talk about it openly, honestly. I am so thrilled to have Dani with us, and she's just incredibly thoughtful and transparent about her own experiences of returning to work after parental leave. So whether you're preparing for your own leave, supporting a partner or colleague, or you're just trying to figure out how to stay grounded through major life transitions, this conversation is meant to remind you that you're not alone and that it's okay to find your own way back. So let's jump into it. Dani, for the audience, tell us a little bit about you and your family.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me, to come on tonight. Like you said, it's a super personal topic, and I hope this can be helpful, as just a point of view and point of reference. But I'll say that I am in my 4th year of practice. I'm at Rutgers, New Jersey, which is where I grew up. So it's just coming on home. And, I feel really fortunate. I've got an amazing husband. He's also a full-time employee. He works as a lawyer in the city, so he's constantly running back and forth. We've got 2 really great kids. Zev is 4.5. Willow is 2.5. And we are 21 weeks pregnant with our 3rd one. So this topic is really near and dear to my heart because I'm getting ready to do it again.
Yes, I'm team 3 too. So go 3. So clearly you guys are very busy at home and both have very demanding works and careers. So
yeah, it's busy.
Awesome.
And, we can't forget the dog. I mean, he's 90 pounds and he was our first baby. So yeah, he's moved down the totem pole a little bit, but he's still, our 3rd kid. But yeah, we're busy. And I think that I've always been really lucky in kind of navigating that transition from resident to fellow to mom and attending, because I always had really great female mentors, who were doing it around me or in front of me or behind me. So I was really lucky. There was no real structured support, but it was a very collegial support that I could always reach back to. So, if someone needs something out there and you're listening to this and you don't feel like you have that, you can always reach out to us and we can be that support system for you remotely.
100%. Oh, that's so amazing that you had so many female mentors. Were they from medical school or residency? Where were they from?
Mostly from residency. I mean, Simone Thavasilian, I really got to give a big shout out to her because I think she really talked to me a lot about, expectations, emotional, logistical, and how to do this. Liza Aguiar, Rashmi Licht. Maddie Kansian, like these were all co-residents and then just attendings that I was always incredibly comfortable with. So they made it easy to reach out to when I was like, how in the world did you adjust your clinic schedule after you had a baby? I'm supposed to be pumping every like 2 hours. Like who has time for that?
Yes. Oh, that's so great. I mean, and that's so important too, because there's some programs that don't have a lot of females, and it's so wonderful to reach out if you don't have someone, or if you do, like you said, that you had such a great relationship and they were able to help you navigate that. Because I think that's probably the most important thing about mentors is someone has done it before you. Like most of us are not doing something for the first time ever. So reach out.
And I think it's helpful to remember that like you are not the first person to do this. Like you may try, you may fail, but you can acknowledge and move on, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, like you, my husband is also works full time. He's a urologist as well. And we have 3 kiddos. I'm a little bit ahead of you now. We have our oldest is 9, our middle is 7, and our youngest, the baby. I keep calling him the baby, but he just turned 5.
Oh my
God. So we're kind of starting to get to even a little bit of a different stage, you know, now with the 5-year-old being able to actually like go to the bathroom by himself.
Oh man, that's
new changes.
Frida.
So this is great. Now, when did you have your first kid?
Yep. So we had Seb when I was a fellow. We had Willow when I was an attending. So definitely different structures, right? I mean, as a fellow, I think it was even before the ACGME redid their rules. So I think I only got like 4 weeks off. I took an extra week or 2 of vacation.
Oh.
That was rough. But at the same time, like you only know what you know, right? So I was like, this is just going to be normal. And I didn't want to miss out on more training at that point. So I think that like my number one piece of advice for anybody is like, make sure you've got a really good partner at home.
100%.
Like none of it, literally, even this podcast wouldn't be possible. That the fact that my husband is like signed off from work, he's got someone else covering, and he's watching the 4-year-old who now gets to indulge in a late bedtime while putting the 2-year-old down to sleep, you know? So you got to have that support structure in your inner circle. And then you just need like layers and layers beyond that. You know, even as a fellow, we were living in Chicago at the time. It was COVID, so we didn't have a lot of people. Both our families were in New Jersey. So the first thing we did when we were coming back home from the hospital was start interviewing nannies.
Yes.
You know, and like having like nanny and then having babysitters and babysitter and babysitter as 3rd, 4th, 5th lines of, you know, backup just in case.
That is so true. Build your village. I think childcare has been like the bane of my husband and my existence because it's hard sometimes to find that. We live in Indiana, and so we don't have any family here. So it's just, we kid, but it's like Team Helen and Aaron. Like, yep, we're Team Bernie. And so we have so many amazing nannies and babysitters. And, you know, you and I were talking about this before we started recording, but same thing. I have a babysitter here tonight that's actually helping with one of the kids while my husband is doing the other 2. And so that we can do these podcasts, we can do these really fun things.
No, exactly.
I think, you know, very similar to you, I had my second kid in fellowship. I had my last kid as an attending, but I had my first kid in residency. And also like you, I think it was 5 weeks for my first after a C-section, 6 weeks after my second after a C-section. And then I think it took 10 weeks for my last child as an attending. And they're both so different, right? Navigating that return from each of those stages.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, as an attendee, as a fellow, I just jumped right back in. My fellowship mentors and directors were incredibly supportive. They're basically just like, do whatever you need to do. We will not ask questions. We will just say yes. And I was like, that sounds great. So, you know, I think it's tough though, because you still want to do all the things that you did before. You just need to do it faster, more efficiently, I guess. I mean, I love the idea of having like protected spaces to pump and clean, and it's not a restroom. But honestly, at the end of the day, I feel like when I got back into work as a fellow and a little bit as an attending as well, like I had to really address, like, well, what are my priorities? And the answer for me was like, I got to pump because I have to feed this kid and I feel like I'll die if I don't. So that was priority number 1. And then priority 1.5 was like, you got to finish out your education because this is the only time you're going to get to do it. As an attending, it's like, well, you got to take care of these patients. So keep everybody safe, right? If you have ever trained with me or around me, you know, that is my number 1 catchphrase is like, well, whatever you're going to do, is that going to keep that patient safe? Yes, then fine, proceed. But I think that reframing that priority and keeping it, you know, fresh in your forefront of your brain as you're coming back helps to cut through a lot of the other emotional burden that comes from just becoming a new parent or coming back as a multiple child parent. And then everything else kind of falls in line, right? So for me, like priority number one was pumping and being able to feed my kid. So that meant that I did it in the locker room, fine. If I did it in a, closed clinic room, fine. I just really wanted like a little bit of privacy and a sink. And then I would walk around with my, like that series container that has the frozen core, so I didn't have to feel tied to a fridge. I always use the wearable pumps because I was like, it's a little bit more discreet. You get a little bit more privacy, then your hands are free. So if you have to catch up on notes, if you have to do op notes, if you just want to mindlessly scroll or like read my Kindle for a mental break for 20 minutes, like I had that freedom to do it.
No, that's so true. That's such an important point. We didn't have the wearable pumps for my first kiddo. I think Willow came out for like the second, and I could never get it to work. And so finally we used, was it Evie?
LV,
Right? LV, yes. I used the LV for the last one, and I did the same thing as you. It was so nice to be able to I could be in the middle of clinic, and it's pumping, and I'm talking to patients. And I know that was I was so nervous to do that the very first time, right? You're worried a patient's going to say something, and being in men's health, we're just sitting around men talking about sexual and reproductive health things.
I know.
But I never had anyone say a word about it. And I mean, probably my funniest story is that I one time was pumping on the way to work, right? I had woken up early. I was heading to the OR, and I'm literally pumping in the car.
Yep.
And as I'm driving to work.
Yep.
And I make this illegal U-turn because as I'm about to pull into the hospital, I realized I'd forgotten bags at home. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got to go run to, I didn't have anything to store it. And I'm running to go to the grocery store, and I get pulled over by a cop. I'm not kidding.
Oh my God.
Your nightmare. I literally got pulled over by a cop. And he comes up to my door and he's asking, why did I pull, do you know why I pulled you over? And I just literally was like, look, I am supposed to be at the OR in about 20 minutes. And I am trying to run to the grocery store so that I can get milk bags because I'm pumping right now for my baby. And he literally leaned in. The car of it saw that. His face got so red. He was so nervous. And he was just like, all right, ma'am, just please try to use your blinker. And he walked off. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Amazing.
This has got to be something.
Oh my God, I love that. I mean, but same but different, right? Driving to work was my favorite time to pump because I was like, no one's going to bother me in here. But same thing, I was racing to get to the OR. I think I was an attending at this point. And L&D is a billion miles away from where our OR is. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to make it there. So this thing's going to leak before I get there. So I race into the first clinic spot I can find. And I'm like, I really need sterile urine containers. And I took 8 of them and I just filled them up with milk. And I was like, okay, whatever. We're just going to have to deal. At least it's sterile. Who cares?
Yes. There's so many. I hope anyone listening, there's so many workarounds. Because I remember as a new mom, it's plastic, glass. I think I used all plastic for my first kid, then glass for my second and third. I mean, it's so silly, right? But there's so many ways that we can do it. So kind of on that note, when you first came back, you talked about pumping in a locker room or a clinic room. Did you have a specific place at your work that you could pump, or how did you kind of find a place for pumping between OR and clinic?
No, it was literally just what's the closest private place that I have 20 minutes of peace and quiet? That's what I'm going to do. And, I think that kind of what you're saying, in men's health, I die laughing every time someone asks me, how do you be a woman in men's health and da-da-da? And do you worry what you wear? And I'm like, are you kidding me? I've literally pumped in front of these people. It's whatever. And I think it really goes back to the idea of just what are my priorities? Keep my kid fed and then take care of my patient. And literally everything else, I think that there's a lot of guilt and shame and anxiety and nervousness around all of this. And I think that at the end of the day, you keep your priorities straight and then just, pardon my French, but cut the bullshit, and just get it done. So for me, at the time as a fellow, we didn't really have close by lactation rooms, so I just used what I had. Same as my first year attending. And now there actually are a lot of lactation rooms in those mama whatever they're called, pods. And now I'm acutely aware of where they are. So I know I have those resources. Our hospital actually has made a lot of leaps and bounds in terms of guidelines, and they're loosey goosey, but I think that they're structured enough where they have specific protections in place. And then I think they just kind of treat you as an adult, reasonable break time. Okay, I'm not going to take 5 hours to pump, but every 3 hours, I'm probably going to build something in. In the beginning, I feel that I tried to do it every 2 and then it just wasn't reasonable. I was my own worst enemy and I would just blow right through that and overschedule myself. So I kind of delayed it to okay, you pump on the way in, you pump at lunch, you pump at the end of the day. you write all notes during your pumping time. And that allows you to see the patients, move on, and then you're more efficient. And hopefully by the time you get home, there's not that many loose ends to wrap up at that point.
It was very similar for me with both residency fellowship and as an attending. There was technically pumping rooms, but they're 3 floors down and all the way across the other side of the hospital when you're in the OR.
Yeah, it's not worth the 7-minute trek.
No. And so I remember just going in the locker room and I would just sit there and pump. And I mean, it was funny. I met so many of the nurses in our hospital from that would also be pumping on their break. But you're right. It's kind of a shame that more hospitals don't think about kind of the flow of things, right? Of where can we have these rooms? Well, there's people that operate, and people that operate are females. And let's have one in a locker room. Let's have a special space just for that, and a refrigerator that isn't the lunch refrigerator for everyone.
Yeah.
Right? Storing your milk.
Something feels weird about that. I agree. And I'm the first proponent to be have no shame about this. But at the same time, putting my milk next to your bologna sandwich feels weird. I don't know.
Even though it's in its own bag, right?
Exactly.
In a cooler bag that we have, and
or a urine cup. Who knows?
Yes. How did you set and manage boundaries around lactation? You brought it up a little bit, but knowing, for example, my first kid, I was lucky that I could go a long period of time without pumping. But I when you're first learning, you don't know these things. And I thought, I have to pump, every set hour here. And if that was in the middle of the case, I would scrub out as a resident. And luckily I had some amazing attendings, that would let me scrub out of a robot case. We would take turns of what we did. And then it got a little easier where I was you know what, even if I'm supposed to pump every, let's say 6 hours or 5 hours or 4 hours, it's okay if I pump in 2 hours because I have a break right now. I'll go ahead and repump empty. And then now I can go back and go another 4 hours, to be a little off schedule and stuff like that. So how did you kind of set and manage boundaries like that for you?
And I think exactly the same thing. I think you have this idea of this is how it's going to be. And then you get into the game and you're oh, never mind. That's just not the same game we thought we were playing. And that isn't that parenting in general?
Yes.
I think it's tough. You're a surgeon. We are surgeons, right? So we have very typically type A personalities. No one likes a surprise. And then you step in and you're just okay, everything is out the window and we're just going to have to fly by the seat of our pants. But yeah, same thing. When I was home with the baby and I was on a set schedule every 3 to 4 hours, we fed or we pumped, and that was it. And then I got back to work and I was I'll do my best. But again, I think you have to give yourself the grace that it's not going to be what you planned it to be. You got to give yourself some flexibility. And that flexibility means that you can walk in with a plan and you may fail. And that's okay. You acknowledge, you pick yourself up, you move on. And then you take the lessons and hopefully you impart it on somebody else so they don't make the same, errors, trial and error. But yeah, I think if I had a 2 hour, if it had been 2 hours and I was well, I've got a nice break now, so I'll just do it. And then I can push that timeline later, have at it. I will say that I went into with the idea that none of my kids were ever purely breastfed. They were always a mix of formula and breast milk. And I think that helped too. We were never rigid. We just wanted them to be fed. And I know that that's not everybody, but that's what worked for my family. So I think it took a lot of the onus off of me, and it made me a better parent, and it made me a better partner.
Yes, I'm so glad you bring that up because, my first was also formula and breast milk. And I remember as a new mom having so much mommy guilt over that. It was so silly. Somehow, right, there's no comparison. A fed baby is a happy baby. And more importantly, a rested mom who's not super stressed and upset and emotional with all of those hormones is a better parent and a better partner and a better physician to your patients.
Yes, exactly. No, exactly. Again, it takes me back to all those priorities where I'm keep your child alive, keep your patient safe, and everything else.
Yes.
And listen, I should bring up, keep your partner happy, right? You're a partnership. He's not, that partner hasn't just faded into the oblivion. And he's somewhere in that 1 and 2 mix. And at any given 20-minute period, things are going to reprioritize a little bit.
Yeah. How did you learn about pumping and lactation, what supplies to get and how you were going to do this? Right? I remember, maybe you used something similar. I remember when I first was in residency, I used one of these Facebook groups. There's one called Dr. Milk, which I thought was super helpful. And my first little one, I had to exclusively pump. And so that was a big change too. And there's some really great, like, exclusively pumping moms groups as well on like Facebook and stuff like that. But I didn't have great luck with like the lactation consultant people at my hospital. What about you?
I mean, it was really a hit or miss. We literally went through like 4, because after my first, we were in the hospital. I mean, get this, you're a urology fellow. You go into retention post C-section, and your doctor's name is Dr. Foley. And he's like, so sorry, you're going to need this for 7 days. You're like, okay.
Could not make this up.
Couldn't make it up more. Thank you, Dr. Foley, for healthily delivering my baby. But, he was wonderful. I have no complaints. But he was like, you're going to have to stay here in the hospital for 7 days. And I was like, I think I'm equipped to take care of this at home. He was like, no. Like, this is our policy. So, I was in the hospital for 7 days. We were just hanging out in Chicago winter. And like, I think we went through 4 different lactation consultants who they rotated in every day, and all 4 had really different strategies. They gave me different things. I think Evan took us home with like 4 suitcases of stuff, because if it wasn't bolted down, we think we probably took it. First piece of advice, which is like, take all the diapers and wipes you can.
Yes.
But no, I mean, I think I used the Dr. Milk Facebook group. I was super lucky. Like, of my college girlfriends and med school girlfriends, I was on the later end of having kids. So by the time we got pregnant, they had these massive Excel sheets of like everything that had worked for them and why. So I did that, and then it was just trial and error. We did the Spectra pump, we did the LV with my first, or the Willow with my second. I think I still have storage bags somewhere in my basement that I guess we'll use for the third. It's a lot of just trial and error, and like Facebook groups and community support.
It's so true. And like, there's no one size fits all. I remember after our first, the lactation consultant was like, if you want to breastfeed, no nipple shields, no passy to the baby. It's just mommy. Like, I'm not kidding. This was the advice I got. So I remember bringing our first one home, and there was like one of the first nights, my poor husband was up in the middle of the night with like his finger like in our little baby's mouth, because we couldn't use a passy, right? We told him no passy. And he's like screaming, crying, because he wasn't hungry. He just wanted to be soothed with like a passy or something. And like, he's sitting there bouncing around. It was so crazy. And then yet when I look at like my last son, where we were able to breastfeed great, and we had this wonderful nursing journey, I did everything that I had originally told not to do. Like, I used a nipple shield at first. He had a passy if he wanted it. We bottle fed, we breastfed, and it was the easiest, best experience. And like, I just laugh now, because it was like so many different advices and pieces of advice, that I got from different lactation consultants. So I think one thing too is if something's not working, like, try other people.
Right.
I mean, I remember one time, my last one, I have to bring this up because I feel like so many people struggle with breastfeeding, about it hurting and stuff. And, no matter what, yes, there's a little bit of learning curve, but it shouldn't hurt once you get past this point. And I remember with my third child, at this point, we'd had 2 already. So we kind of felt like a little bit like, not novices anymore. But the lactation consultant came in and she was like, yeah, everything looks great. It's just going to hurt. And it just hurts sometimes for people. And I luckily knew enough to be like, wow, she's bad.
Yeah.
Let me go request someone else and let me move on. But I always worried, like, what if that was the first one for someone else?
I know.
And that was what they had heard. It's like, oh. But now there's actually these breastfeeding medicine doctors that are fantastic that you can, consult with. And if there isn't one in your area, there's several that now do virtual visits. I'm lucky I have one here in Indiana that I used to help us with my last son. And she was fantastic. I mean, like, just really so much support, is really like so nice. When, that kind of brings, what do you wish maybe someone had suggested, like, to help you with lactation, or something that maybe you would have done different?
I honestly don't know. Like, I think some of the advice that we got going into having our first was that, look, like, you can't be rigid about this. Like, you're just going to have to be flexible. And if it seems like someone is giving you really rigid advice, listen to your gut. Like, if that doesn't seem right, then like, you should probably get second and third opinions. And it's the kind of what I tell patients all the time too. I'm like, look, like, I want you to get second and third opinions, because you should gut check yourself. And also, like, if you don't feel comfortable with me, then like, let's find someone who you are comfortable with. Like, you're talking about some of the most personal things, like breastfeeding, lactation, men's sexual health. Like, you should be comfortable with the person on the other end of that table, right? So I think that was the advice I got in the beginning. And that's really what I kind of held true to. We went through a lot of lactation consultants. Some of them were just like, they were great because they just gave us different positions, and they're kind of like, look, this is going to work for you right now, but in the future, like you're going to want to switch to a more natural cradle hold, and this is how you're going to do it, but now's not the time. And they gave us just like a lot of different brands and options and ointments and pumps. I think the one thing that they were like, that I was really panicked about was like my milk just wasn't coming in. It was like day 6, 7 before I was really like, oh, like that's what it's supposed to look like. It was a lot of like triple feeding, right? Where like you try to breastfeed for 15, 20 minutes. It doesn't work. By the end, like both of us are sobbing. So then I'm pumping while my husband is bottle feeding. And then my husband gets to have the calm, like beautiful baby experience. And I'm really upset. Hormones are raging. So, again, like I think you call in your village, right? So like my husband was great about like, I never watched a single breastfeeding pump part in the first like month and a half that I had children, because he just did it and it was really nice. So I think like call in your village. Don't be afraid to get second, third, fourth opinions if you need it. And then just find something that works for you. And that's going to mean, again, like it's going to mean trial and error. And if that means that your kid's going to need some formula, like you might need to supplement a little bit. I don't know. We also went through like a huge formula journey. I don't know what that was like for you, but that's a whole nother like PhD black hole you can fall into.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. And again, to your point about finding a good partner. And, even if you're someone who maybe is choosing to have a child outside of a partnership, like, again, find your village, find your help where you can. Because just like you, like my husband would wake up in the mornings or in the middle of the night and he would feed the baby too, right? And he would also help wash parts, and he would, maybe entertain the baby while I was taking time with our other son so that he didn't feel like neglected, or I didn't feel like I was neglecting my other child. And so it's just, there's so many different ways that a partner or a spouse can support you. It doesn't always have to fall on you, the female, because you're breastfeeding or you're nursing. Because even after I would nurse or at the beginning, I could hand, in the middle of the night, I would do that. And then I'd hand the baby to my husband, and he would burp them back to sleep while I could go back to sleep quicker, right? Or he would take, maybe I would pump too, right? And then to try to get a little extra, and then he would go and put the bottles up. And how we just kind of did it was, if you're in the OR the next morning, like we tried to do, like that person got the most sleep, obviously you're stuck as the female, right? If you're breastfeeding.
Yeah.
But, and if it was clinic, then, we were both into it. So it was just, again, you need your village so much. And I obviously couldn't afford this as a resident or a fellow, but as an attending, we actually did have like a night nanny. And I'll say that was phenomenal.
Yeah, tell me more, because that's what we're debating now.
Yeah. So as a fellow, I was so broke, I could only afford it like two nights ever. But I did take advantage one night where I just had someone all night long, because again, I was exclusively pumping, and you get to a point at some point where you can sleep a couple more hours without having to wake and then go right back to bed. But when I did a night nanny, it was a service. You could do however many you wanted to do. And I did someone 8 weeks after. So they came literally 3 days after you had your baby or whenever you were home.
Oh, so nice.
And they would come at nighttime. They would wash the baby's laundry. They would wash all the pump parts. They would wash all the bottles, get everything ready. And they would, if the baby stirred in the middle of the night, they would rock them and rub them. And then when they was hungry, since my last one I was nursing and I didn't have to just exclusively pump, they would bring the baby to me. I would nurse, then they would come back and take the baby and birth them and put them to bed and get them ready for sleep. So it optimized how much time I was able to sleep, and it minimized how much time I was doing laundry, cleaning, and all the 5,000 pump parts and everything else you have to get, for work. So to me, it was, money well spent. And if we're done having kids, but if I was ever having another and I could afford it, 100%. And if not, find a village. Find someone that maybe can help you, family members. There are night nannies you can just get, hire individually. You can find them online. But the other thing is find someone who supports your values for your child. I remember the first person I interviewed, she was like, yes, I like to exercise babies' lungs. It's important for them to exercise their lungs. And I was like, what? And basically she meant cry it out, that she was just going to let my child cry it out. And I'm like, I'm paying you to be in my home so that you can comfort and be with my child. Like, no. So that was very quickly, I was like, this is not who I want. Like, I want someone who's going to support my desires, that I want, if my baby's upset, I want you to pick him up. I want you to hold him, and like what worked for our family, But I still love it. It was like lung aerobics, I think is what she called it.
Oh my God. I mean, there was one point where my husband was freaking out because I think one of them was crying. And I was like, well, if he's crying, he's breathing. And really facetiously, he was like, that's not what I meant. And I was like, I know, I'm just trying to lighten the load right now. But I swear, like we did the cry it out method, I think both times. It was around like 6 weeks, 10 weeks, somewhere around there. And both times my husband would have to send me out of the house or the apartment. He would literally be like, go take the dog for a walk and don't come back until I tell you it's safe. Because you can't handle this. I'm like, you're right, I cannot. Know your strengths.
Yeah. Yes. And know like how you and your partner want to do everything with your kiddo and find someone that supports that, whatever that is.
Yeah. And I think that extends even into like nannies and daycare and childcare. Like one-off babysitting, okay, fine, like keep them alive and safe. But yeah, like long-term nannies, like we're so fortunate. We finally found someone who she's a great like housemate, honestly. She doesn't live with us, but she's here enough that she might as well. And she plays with the kids. She loves the kids the way we do. And it took 4 years to find her, but you can bet that like we are not letting her go.
No, good care and someone who is like wonderful. They really become a family member to you. And
Yeah.
I mean, they are worth their money in gold.
Their money in
literally.
gold. I totally agree. And I think that's a lot easier for us to say now as attendings compared to like the struggles that you go through as a resident and a fellow. But we work really hard, right? Like everybody is working really, really hard. And if you have the means to be able to adjust to do it, then do it. So we realized a year ago, like, we don't want to do laundry. We don't have time to do laundry. I will happily pay somebody $100 every couple of days to come and do my laundry. But just that mental like burden relief is worth every penny we've ever spent. And it gives us back those couple of hours to just like leisurely sit at the dinner table and not freak out about being, off schedule or actually able to go to that soccer practice and not worry about whatever we have waiting for us at home.
That's such a good point. I 100% am with you. We order our groceries because I don't want to spend an hour or two in a grocery store. We have someone who cleans our house once a week because I don't want to clean toilets. I don't want to do bathroom. I want to spend time with my kids when I'm home from work. So it's so true. And then I think, I guess if because we both were there too, like, right, a broke fellow or a broke resident, I think remember that you can still build a village and there's other moms that are happy to help you. Like, I mean, I still will offer, hey, let me watch your kiddo while you get some extra sleep for some of our, junior friends and when they're first starting out, have babies, or, hopefully you have family nearby. If you don't and you're like us, find little babysitters. I mean, even as a resident, I had one weeknight a week that I tried to do, maybe when my oldest was like closer to like 3 or 4 months, that I would pay, it was like a high school kid or a college kid to just kind of watch the baby. I was still in the house, but like just so I could have some me time and feel like myself after just like, you work all day long as a resident or you work all day long as a fellow and then you run home and it was just like, you also need a little bit of a break for you too,
absolutely.
To just decompress.
You need that mental like health wellness, right? So like, I think that's something that was really hard, was just coming back from maternity leave, however long we took, and then going back into that surgeon role, right? So it's just this weird mental and emotional shift where I felt guilty every time I left the house and left my kids with somebody, even with my husband, like even with, I just felt wrong. And I had to really, it took a while for me to get past that. So I think people will take this with different perspectives. But for me, I was like, if I'm going to leave my house to not be with my kids, we're going to maximize why we're doing that. So my husband and I have come up with this phrase of just like, well, is it mission critical? So like, you get busy, right? Like there were opportunities where you can go to like an industry dinner or this interview or, this hospital thing, whatever. And it's like, well, is that mission critical? And the answer is like, is that worth the stress you're going to put on your spouse or the babysitter or the kids because you're not there? And sometimes the answer is yeah. Today I was in the OR super late and I wanted to take care of that patient. I didn't want to push it off to 2 days from now. So I said, yes, this is mission critical. We're going to have to like make this work. And we did. And it was fine. And we all understand it. But I think that's the phrasing that my husband and I use now, where it's just like, no questions asked. We'll figure it out and it's fine. But for me, like if I leave this house, like it really has to be worth it. And sometimes that means it's a full clinic day. So my nurses know, like on my 1.5 clinic days, like we're going to pack that room and I'm really sorry, but we're going to be there a little bit late and it's going to be chaos, but we're going to get the job done.
Yes, yes. I remember like that was a big deal for me too. I felt so bad being away from my sons or like in residency. I remember there was a day that I woke up in the morning, my son was still asleep, and I went to work and I came home and he was asleep. And I realized that like I had gone the entire day without seeing my son. And I remember I'm sure I cried my eyes out. But it's like really hard, right? You have this emotional burden of being away from your child while also still trying to go back to work, provide the best care for your patients. Like, how do you manage that burden? Like, what were things that kind of helped you? Because it's tough.
It's so hard. I mean, we're so lucky because our daycare that our kids are in sends like 1,000 photos throughout the day. So I use that to kind of get me through. And then usually if I'm home or if my husband's home, like we'll FaceTime, even if it's for 20 seconds. Like my kids have FaceTime my OR nurses God knows how many times while I'm like, like protecting the patient. But like it just be like, mommy's working, sorry. So I think we do that stuff like that. We send each other photos back and forth as much as we can. And then I think you maximize the time that you're home, right? So when I'm home, I'm mom and my phone is on. My residents know they can always call and I'll pick up and we'll figure it out. But like when I'm home, I'm mom. And usually when the kids are sleeping, that's when I'm like, okay, let me like catch up on this stuff. Maybe I'll put like some dumb TV show on in the background. And it's not meant to be stressful. It's just like, that's kind of my protected time. But I think like what you said too, like there are plenty of nights in the week where I have a nanny and she's like taking care of the kids and I'm upstairs in my office with the door shut and I'm like, look, 45 minutes, I'm going to set a timer. I got to blitz through all this stuff. And again, in the words of Simone Sealand, sometimes like done is better than perfect, right? It's like you get through it. And I'm not saying do it sloppily, but like sometimes you just have to finish it and then move on. And you'll be the right judge of like what that is, right? Like where that boundary is. But I agree, like you have to feel around for what that boundary is and hold the line. And sometimes you are going to tip that skill more towards work. And sometimes you're going to have to tip that skill more towards kids. Like I'm never going to forget the day my daycare called me and my son had just fallen into a changing table. And they're like, I think he might need stitches. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. He's probably like oozing a little bit. And I got there and I was like, oh, he definitely needs stitches. So, that was like 20 patients rescheduled and we were racing back and forth and I like called in a billion favors. Thank God we have great plastic surgery friends. And 4 hours later, I was sitting back in the clinic and I was like, well, we still have 10 more patients here. So if my nurses are cool watching this sad 2-year-old, then like,
Yes.
yeah, I'll finish that.
No, that's so true. Oh my gosh. Yes. We've had the same things, right? I remember one time I was scrubbed in the OR and my son was in preschool and he was, get this, chasing a bubble on the playground and ran into a slide and it knocked out all 4 teeth, his bottom teeth, which were like baby teeth, not ready to come out. And they call me and they're like, he's bleeding a lot. And I'm like, wait, what? Like it's on speaker. I'm in the OR. I'm like, I'm sorry, what? And like, I couldn't leave, right? So I had to call my husband real quick. I'm like, what are you doing? I need you to go pick up our son. And you just make it work. Or like when your kid's sick, right? And sometimes I've had to bring them to the office. We like, sometimes you can't find a babysitter or you can't find someone to stay at home that can watch them. And luckily when this happened, our kids were old enough that like they could with like a little iPad or something, bring them and sit them in the office or a little blankie and just let them kind of sleep. And like we have amazing nurses that would like help, entertain them if they needed something. But it's the realities, right, of having kids and managing being back at work and kind of dealing with that. I remember when I was in residency, because again, I didn't have family then either, when that happened one time, it was so scary, but I went on like care.com and I just found someone like emergently like, hey, can you come in? And they came in and I had cameras all in my house,
No, same
so that
here,
I could see anything.
And we're open about that, but we're like, yeah, by the way, like there's a lot of camera.
Yes, it's so important. And I would never stop doing that. I think it's such a great thing. You bring up so many right things about kind of how you manage the emotional burden of being away. And I remember, it's funny, I think with residency and fellowship, it was like you knew you had to finish your training. And so it was just like, I'm going to go back. I'm going to do this. But there was a time after my 3rd that I remember it was just so sweet. And I was able to take the most time off that I had ever taken. And I wasn't sure I wanted to go back to work, like right off the bat. I was like, or maybe part-time. And, Mina Lee, one of my good friends, gave me the best advice. She was like, give it 6 months. You still have that hormones and everything pumping. Like, give it 6 months. And if you still feel that way, then you can kind of reevaluate how do you want to prioritize work or how do you want to change your scheduling. And by 6 months, I was fine and back in the swing of things. But But it's true. You get really emotionally attached and you have all these hormones running through and you feel awful leaving your kiddos and getting that phone call from your nanny that like they just rolled over and you missed it.
Oh
right. And you're like,
and we just want to
But-
it's like daggers through the heart when that happens. Oh, no, I know. And, I ultimately, my husband and I have always gone back and forth, and it's just like, well, like, are you happy doing this? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, the answer is yes. Like, when I'm home and with my kids, I'm really happy. And when I'm at work and I'm with my other kids or my residents, or my patients and my nurses, like, I'm also really happy. And I think that if I were to give up one or the other, like, you just wouldn't be you anymore, So things are always going to feel, I think, a little bit out of whack and a little chaotic. I don't know that there is such a thing as work-life balance anymore. And that's fine, like and especially as an attending now, like I agree with you. It's hard because you don't have that like finish line anymore. Like you're doing the damn thing, right?
yes.
You just gotta do it. But I think that for me, like my schedule has been really flexible. Like my daughter needs a lot of like OT and PT and speech, and she's making great progress, and we're super grateful. But it's meant that I had to take 6 months of FMLA leave where I was like, look, I don't work on Tuesdays because I gotta be able to take care of all this stuff. And my research day, like my research is spent on my laptop in the waiting room of like all of these different therapy appointments, right? So like thankfully, I was able to communicate that to my division and my department, and they're like, whatever you need, just take it. Like, I will always be grateful for that. And that means that, like, on my OR day, that's my Thursday, usually it's Thursday, like, my parents always come for dinner. They always pick up the kids, and they will stay until we come home, which is sometimes midnight. So, like, huge shout out to my parents for doing that. And shout out to my residents for tolerating me.
That's wonderful. Oh,
yeah, we're
That's
super lucky. But I mean, those were the thoughts that we had when we were like, well, there's a job opportunity in California and one in, Texas, and there's one in Florida, and there's one in New York. And my husband was like, we can't go anywhere but this like 20-mile radius around New Jersey. I don't know what you're thinking.
yeah, right. No, that's so smart. And if you can, oh my gosh, Erin and I both, if you could be by family and you have a supportive family, it is the best, especially when you have kids. And if you're stuck like one of us that doesn't have that, just build your village and find the people that'll help you. You're right, absolutely right. There isn't like a work-life balance, and you'll go through different seasons, like you mentioned, where maybe you're prioritizing work right now, or maybe you're prioritizing family right now, and that's okay. That is okay for you. Like, do what works for you. You don't have to be like, oh, and I take care of myself here, and I do my friends group thing this week and that. Like, there's been many times where it is work and family, and those are the two most important things to me, where I love both like you. I feel fulfilled at both, and that's what works. And on that note, like, so besides work and family, how do you set boundaries between like attending conferences, right, leaving, and like really protecting your schedule?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I feel like I could take notes from you on how to do that. 'Cause I don't feel like I've like only recently have I been so fortunate to go to conferences and be invited to do like podiums and talks and stuff, like not just like, oh, like you had research presented, right? So for me, like, again, like it's got to be really worth it. Not to say that like I don't want to go to these conferences to learn. Like I would love that. But sometimes it's just not reasonable. So like every fall from September until November, I feel like we've got all these conferences and I'm like, oh, I really want to go to that. But am I really going to be able to take off 3 days and go to Seattle and then come back and still be a good parent, or, and take care of all these people? Like, no. So you kind of got to pick and choose. Like there are years where I go to the ASRM and I ASRM my heart out. And then there are years where I go to SMSNA and like I do that. But it's just kind of a pick and choose. I will say that like we have a family calendar, a Google Calendar between my husband and I, that we are like viciously retentive about. So like the days where I'm in the operating room, I will say like, Danny to OR leaving at 6:30 a.m. Like, hint, you're on, sorry. Or like, we have contacted this babysitter. She has confirmed she is coming. She'll be here from this hour to this hour. So that calendar looks like a disaster. But that's the only way that we can keep everybody on the same page. And I would strongly recommend that if you don't have that yet, like do it and share it with your nearest and dearest who are your support structures.
We actually have a Google Calendar too, 100%.
Yep.
Like we live by it.
Live
and then
die.
in the rare chance where I forget to put something on our Google Calendar because like I put it on my work calendar, oh my gosh, everything breaks off. He's like, it wasn't on the calendar.
This isn't real. I know.
It's so true.
We have that.
Is it mission critical?
Is it? I don't know. You may need to readjust it.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but I can't
So
tell you how many times we've had my parents basically. My parents and Evan's parents basically moved in for like the month of October because we were all over the place. And every third day, one of us was leaving to go to some business meeting or dinner or conference. So they just moved in. It was great.
No, that is so wonderful. And again, like you mentioned, you just kind of feel better because it's your family and it's people
Exactly.
you know love you and love your kiddos and trust them. One thing we haven't talked about yet is how do you manage sleep deprivation at work?
Oh my
Being
God.
up all the nights and then having to show up and then coming home and taking care of your other son while dealing with the newborn or pumping. I mean, like, oh my gosh, what did you do?
Like so much caffeine. So now in pregnancy, this has actually been the hardest I've ever felt because I truly penned in by how much caffeine I can have. This is actually where I think I've struggled the most, even compared to like being in training and having children in pregnancy and loss and things like that. I feel like I like schedule my sleep, right? So I'm like, okay, like today is going to suck. You're going to have to put on your big girl pants and boss through it. But you get to go to sleep tonight at 9:30. And sometimes that's earlier if you fall asleep putting your son to bed because you're not going to get out of that
Yes.
room. So I think that like to me, like those small wins, I've always been someone who can just like, if I can see the carrot, I will chase it. And I know that about myself. So that's always how I've like tried to motivate. I am a big fan of the couch nap. So I have certainly had days in clinic where I'm just like, okay, I can eat or I can take a 20-minute nap. And sometimes it's a 20-minute nap. And my nurses know, like, okay, if I'm not back here in 25 minutes, you better hammer call me on my cell phone or just knock on the door and wake me up.
No, that's such good points too, right? Managing sleep like wherever you can get it. And I just like you, I lived off caffeine. Oh my gosh. But I agree with you. And like sometimes like I'd ask my husband, I'd be like, hey, look, I know you're really tired too, but I'm about to fall down. Like you just take turns and like which battle and can you help me out and just give me an hour to like pass out right now. I know you're with all three, or all two of the kiddos, three of the kiddos. And just like let me crash for a minute. And that's where, sometimes that if you're a resident fellow, whatever, spending money, get a sitter, literally have them come over just so you can sleep.
Exactly.
So you can catch up. And I mean, it's so important. And I think also knowing your limits, like you said, like knowing yourself. And if you really feel unsafe, like, you know what, call in. If you need to call in a day or you need a mental health day or you need something, like reach out, do the support. Don't try to keep pushing because there's no reward. Like if you, that put your mask on first. If you don't take care of you, you can't take care of other people.
No, absolutely. I totally agree. And look, and it's something like you can't call that in all the time, right? But like, I think that you've hopefully gone through your training and your career building, protecting and building that reputation of like really hard ethical work. So when you do need that mental health day, you need that sick day, you need that reprieve, people know like, oh, it's real. Like this, they like this isn't just a drill or whatever. You put that money in the bank and then you spend it when you need to for a rainy day.
My husband and I, we really would do such a kind of a back and forth. Like when the kids were really little, one of us would sleep in on Saturday while the other got up with them. And then we would alternate. Then on Sunday, the other one got to sleep in while we got up. Like just little ways too to catch up during the weekend so that you can get through the week during your week and kind of really make it
No,
happen.
exactly. I mean, what did we do with Willow? With Willow, we already had Sebastian running around. So he would get up at 6 a.m, like clockwork, and be like, oh my God, I'm begging you to go back to sleep. Yes. So the way we did it was, and I was probably a year and a half into my being an attending. So I think what I would do is most nights I would just be up all night with the baby, with Willow. And that was fine because that meant that when Seb got up at 6, I was off the clock. And it was Evan's problem. So I would get to sleep in till like 9, 9:30, 9, 10, and Evan would be up from 6 on. So at least there was that overlap. And then, when there were nights where I was like, I just can't do this. Like, I don't think I can keep this kid safe because I'm exhausted. He'd be like, okay, we'll switch. So he would do the night shift. I'd wake up and pump and go back to bed. And then I got up early with Sebastian. But it was always this like 3-hour shift between the two. But if you can just get that protected sleep, you're going to make it through. Like, this is all temporary. That's the thing that I think I had to really remind myself in training without kids and training with kids. this is all really temporary and this is your life. This isn't a drill. You don't get to do this again. It's going to be different with every child, with every job, with every patient. So it's temporary. You got to get through it, but tomorrow is going to be something different.
Absolutely. That's such a good point. I mean, there is an end. And each phase, it gets a little easier at 3 months. It gets a little easier at 6 months. It gets a little easier at 9 months. While there's different challenges, things get better.
Yeah.
But really, get your sleep where you can. Use caffeine if you need it. And if you've really reached a limit, like calling your help, calling your favors, and kind of go from there. You mentioned you have a wonderful family that you're close to and a great supportive husband. What's worked really well in terms of managing childcare as far as being a busy urologist too? And I know we touched on it a little bit, but tell me a little bit.
Yeah, I think, we have a great daycare, and we basically picked the daycare based off of like hours. So one was just like, do you have early hours and do you have late hours? And our daycare is not the closest thing to our house. It's a good 15 minutes away. And there were plenty of other closer options. But this one goes from 7 a.m. until 6:30 p.m. And
that's great.
Which was great. And we loved, they took kids from 3 months, which we never needed, but it was good to know we had it, until all the way through preschool with good summer camps. And then back up on that was they had really good programming, and the kids had field trips and, great teachers. And that daycare has really become part of our family. We love going there. And they help take care of us, so that's been instrumental. We live really close to Princeton campus. And I suspect that most of you residents and fellows live close to a college or university or some kind of school, in which case we have literal teams of Princeton students who come and take care of us as well. So I don't know how we ended up on it, but most of the track and field team knows us, and they either have taken care of our dog or our kid.
That's wonderful. And it's cheaper, right? You have an energetic kid that is happy to help you watch the kiddos and all that good stuff.
Yes. And let me tell you, college athletes wake up early and they don't complain about it. So if I ask them to, we've actually never done this, but one of the moms in the daycare, she's a single mom. She's got 2 little girls. She has made it, her practice. So she basically only uses the swim team at the College of New Jersey. And they come at 5:30, 6 in the morning when she's got to get on the train to New York early, and they get the kids ready. They bring them to the daycare so that she can go to work early and then come home early to pick up the kids on time.
Oh, yeah, right? I remember doing something similar when I was a fellow. I had this group of mommies that were in our apartment complex that we become friends. And Aaron was he was already an attending while I was in fellowship. And so he was driving an hour and a half, 2 hours to Jersey where he was working. And I had to be at work early for the OR. And it was just one of those weird days where we both had to leave super early, and I didn't know what to do. And one of my neighbors, I was like, hey, I'll pay you. And of course she wouldn't take any money, but she was just I'll come over. I'll bring, and she woke up her little kiddos who were up, and they just slept in our house. And they came in so that someone was in the house, a body was in the house until our nanny could get there, because our nanny at the time, couldn't get there till 6:30 or 7, and we were leaving at 5 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So again, there's so many different ways. It's just building that village and finding what works.
What works. And
those are such great points.
I will say too that I don't think I could have done this as a first year attending, because I think they're still kind of feeling you out, making sure that you could do this. But now as a 3rd, 4th, 5th year attending, I don't really have qualms about saying, look, I know you want clinics to start at 8, but I can't get there before 8:45. It just is what it is. Sorry, Rutgers. But that's just what it is. And, and I do that so that I can take my kids to school some days, so that my husband gets a break. And then honestly, there are days where that's the only time I see them. I get to spend real meaningful time with them while I wake them up and brush their teeth and give them breakfast and get them to daycare. That's a good hour and a half, 2 hours that I might not get on the back end because I'm coming home late from clinic. And by the time they come back, they're already in bed. So you take the wins where you can.
No, that's so true. And you can control the morning, right? When I think of it in my head, I can always control when I leave, but I'm not always able to control when I get back home.
No.
So like you, I love taking my kids to school. It's one of my really special, meaningful things that I do, is getting up with them and helping them start their day well, and just getting those snuggles in the morning.
Oh, I know.
But yeah, there's actually some programs in the U.S. Montefiore is one, I believe, and I'm sure there's many more. And hopefully there will be a lot more, listen, people that are in program administration, but where you can have family, practice attending junior have faculty that, they choose to come in and start later so they can spend their mornings with their kids. Or maybe they come in earlier and they start seeing patients at 7 so that they can leave earlier to pick their kids up from school. But that's, a great way where programs can actually help work around family and work and being really supportive of your faculty and really building that community that, hey, we know that people have a life and we're going to respect that. We want you to come to work and take great care of patients and love what you do. And we also want you to feel whole and at peace with being able to take care of your family, that you don't have to juggle both, or choose one or the other rather.
No, I totally agree. I'm always so jealous of the hospital systems that have like on-site daycare. Right.
Oh,
so it's
yes.
just like there's no like 30-minute round trip before you can actually get over to the hospital. Oh, man. Like we made that pitch a while ago and they're like, keep dreaming.
No, I know, right? Like it really should be something that we all advocate more for, because women are physicians and even like parental leave for the husband, right? Like we need to have childcare options and we need to have the ability to make it easy so that it is easier for you.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
We both kind of talked about our spouses being such an important role who've really helped with this. How have you really maintained your relationship with your spouse as you navigate this new role? Because it changes things, right?
Yeah, it definitely changes things. We try to do date nights every couple of weeks. Sometimes we miss it. Sometimes we can do it. Again, like I am super privileged. My parents are both of our parents are very involved. So once a year, they'll usually take our kids for a long weekend and we can kind of like steal away. I don't know if that'll change when we have 3, then they're outnumbered. So this might have been the last year, but that's been always really nice too. And then I honestly think like most of our relationship some days is just via text and like calling each other for 45 seconds. And literally I'll just say like, I just wanted to hear your voice. That's it. I have nothing else to say. I just needed to hear your voice and I can go about my day again. So it's those little things here and there. We leave a lot of Post-it notes and like postcards back and forth too as the year goes. So, but I think that we watch a lot of funny Instagram reels. That's like, you are not the enemy. Bedtime is the enemy. And I think reframing that is very, very helpful.
Our newest one, because we have 3 and you'll get there too, is my husband sends me funny reels of like, first child, example, second child, example, third child, example. And I'm like, how do they know our family? Like, it's so true.
Are they in our house? I don't understand. Same thing. It was hysterical. Evan sent it to me and it was like, first child, like something happens, they've been wrong. And it's like this dramatic screaming, crying thing. Second child, like coolly, viciously just being like, yeah, you messed around, you found out.
Oh, it's so true. Aaron and I do the same thing. We and sometimes we're good about it, sometimes we're not, where we have like a date night once a week. And there were seasons where like we went months without having a date night. But
yes.
Similar to you, we, in the morning, that's our thing. When he's driving to work or I'm driving to work, I call him and it's like, I know I just saw you, I just left the house, but it's just that connection of like, hey, how are you doing? Check in. What's the schedule today? What's our plans? Who's picking up the kids?
Yeah.
What's going on here? And then, when I'm gone, because I travel sometimes a lot, depending on the months for conferences or work or things that are really important to me with work. And Aaron's at home with the kids, And so I come back and like, I know that like, hey, he deserves to go on a golf trip with the guys. Or, maybe tonight I'm going to say, you know what? Go down to the basement, go watch football, go order some food in. I'll take care and put all the kids to sleep tonight, like so that he gets that break too of really kind of give and take, right? Because he also has a very demanding job. He's also very tired and doing that. So we just have to remember, right? Like even when we're all tired that like we're team Helen Bernie and what's mission critical? Like what do we?
No, I know. It's the same thing. Like I told my husband months ago, I was like, you should plan this ski trip with your high school friends. You guys have been talking about doing this for like 2 years. Just do it. And like, let me tell you, like pick this weekend in 9 months and then just commit to it and book it and it's fine and we'll figure it out. And that was like really nice mental wellness for him, So I'm not saying that happens once a year. Like we try to do that more often. And some seasons it works and some seasons it doesn't. But I think you got to give yourself and your partner the grace of like, you are not just parent and worker. Like before all of that, you had interests. So like cultivate that because one day the kids will be out of the house and you're not going to have anything left, So I think it is really important. You got to protect. That was the foundation relationship. You got to protect it. We actually try to carpool together as much as we can. So Evan takes the train to New York a bunch. So there will be days where I just like, I chauffeur the bus and I drop the dog at daycare, the kids at daycare. And then Evan and I get a protected 40 minutes where no one is interrupting us in the
Oh.
car. And we just hang out and chat, and I drop them off at the train station and then pull into our hospital parking lot. So those are some of my favorite mornings altogether.
Oh, that's so wonderful. And again, it's just making that time, finding whatever it is that works for you if you're listening. My last question I kind of wanted to ask is, so when you had yours as an attending, your second child was during your second year as an attending, is that right?
Yeah. Second year.
I think same for me for my third. So how did you rebuild or build your practice after being away? I remember feeling, I took 10 weeks, but I remember feeling a lot of pressure of like, I've only been here a year. I'm in my second year. I need to get back quickly. I need to see these patients. And, at the end of the day, the patients are always going to be there. And I felt like, this is the time that you can't get back. But there is a juggle between, making sure you're working and you're making the RVUs and you're seeing your patients and you're available and affable and able to take care of the patients. What were kind of some tips for how you felt to kind of build your practice after being away or having that guilt of like, oh my God, I just started, I'm 1 year in, I'm gone now, and now I'm back. How did you manage that?
It's really anxiety provoking. Like that just is what it is. So once you accept that, I think it makes it easier to move on. I was really afraid that my block time would be taken away from me because it would look like I wasn't filling it. So once I was comfortable like announcing my pregnancy and like kind of setting the dates, I stuck to them. So I was like, look, I'm going to go out on this day, short of like this baby coming early, and I'm coming back on this day. And my partners were fabulous. I mean, that's why part of the reason why I picked this job is because I have the best partners on the planet. And they were super supportive. And because they know I would have done the same for them, vice versa, but they booked into that OR time for me. So at least it looked utilized. So I never had to worry about losing it. And then I basically I said, okay, I'm going to come back on September 1st. So my OR scheduler booked cases for me September 2nd. And I told her, don't go crazy. Like, don't book me to midnight, but ease me back in. But I think that was super useful so that I at least hit the ground running and just get back into the swing of things. I reached out to a lot of my referring docs when I knew those dates to say, look, I'm pregnant, I'm delivering, I'm going to be planning to be gone from here to there. I'm super happy to still see patients. If you need care in between, maybe you can refer to this other person who's a little bit farther, but I trust them. So if your patient needs help right now, they can certainly do it. I did a lot of handouts for my patients and for my partners because no one else is managing testosterone in my practice. They're not doing fertility work. So I basically had handouts of if this, then that, right? This is a warning. This is a major problem. You need to, this is a hematocrits over 52%, send them to hematology, have them go donate blood, hold, this is the regimen I would follow. My phone was always on for better or for worse. So when there was a red flag where someone was I'm seeing your patient in clinic today. I really have no idea what to do with this. Can we talk for a few minutes? And I think that helped to protect the practice. So patients never felt abandoned. The 4 months leading into maternity leave, I also really tried to write incredibly detailed notes of this is my plan for the next 6 months for this patient so that if someone had to pick it up, they had an idea. And then I just tried not to schedule patients for follow-up. So I was really cognizant of okay, I would normally see you while I'm on leave. So instead I'm going to see you early and then late, and it's only going to shift you by a month or two. So I don't think you'll notice that I'm gone.
No, those are great tips. I did some of the similar things as you, but I remember definitely feeling so much guilt, right? I was oh gosh, the patients, and I think you just have to give yourself a little bit of grace, they're gonna be okay,
Yeah.
and prioritizing family right now is also okay. I have wonderful partners, and I front loaded my call before I took off so that I could have 3 months post pregnancy with no call, so that was a nice little thing too. So if you're able to do that or someone's, you can work that in your practice, I definitely think that was really helpful. I did that in residency too, where I just kind of took a little bit more call up front so that it smoothed itself out, at the end and things like that too.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I did that with Willow. I haven't done that so far with this pregnancy, but we have more partners now, thankfully. So it's not as bad. But I think if we still had a smaller pool, I would have done the same thing. front load it and then give yourself a break on the other end.
Well, is there anything that you want to say for someone listening out there right now that is also planning to have a baby soon, or maybe is also pregnant right now and going through all the stresses? What advice would you give them?
Pay it forward. So I think that generations of women ahead of me in healthcare or just careers talking about what they struggled with, what they failed at, what pissed them off, what worked, and just normalizing it, right? And making it so that like if you've never lactated, you have no idea what we're talking about. But you've probably been in proximity to somebody who has. So that person talking about it and being open and just making it normal and every day, it makes it easier for everybody who's behind you. So, I mean, that's why I love podcasts like this. It's why I love, it's why everyone in the hospital knows I'm pretty much like an open book about this stuff. I mean, I think and it's not just because, we work in fertility and in sexual health. Like, I'll talk about pregnancy loss. I'll talk about my IVF journey. I'll talk about my 2+ kids and dog. Like, it's fine. But I think truly, like, pay it forward. And if you're comfortable, then normalize it because it makes it easier for everybody else.
Amen to that. So, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge everyone listening who's either been through this, is about to go through it, or is even supporting a partner who is. Coming back to work after parental leave, as you've heard, is not easy. It is emotional, it is exhausting, and sometimes messy, but it's also really a wonderful season of growth and rediscovery. You're learning to balance two of the most meaningful parts of your life, which is caring for others and caring for your family. And there's no simple or right way to do it. Give yourself some grace. Know that you are doing better than you think you are.
Yeah.
And celebrate the small wins, right? Build your support system. Remember that you're not alone in this journey. Take care of your partner who's also helping you. But thanks so much, Dani, for joining us on this BackTable Urology episode. This has been so amazing and a wealth of information. Thank you so much for sharing all of your tips with us.
Of course. Thank you so much. And good luck to everybody.
Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, rate the podcast 5 stars, and share with a friend. If you have any questions or comments, DM us at _BackTable Euro on Instagram, LinkedIn, or X. BackTable is hosted by myself, Ruchika Talwar,
Jose Silva,
and Suzette Sutherland.
Our audio team is led by Kieran Gannon, with support from
Aaron Bowles,
Gabe DeGrazio,
and Josh Spencer.
Design and digital marketing led by Brian Schmitz.
Social media and PR by Chi Ding.
Administrative support provided by Judy Dela Cruz.
Thanks again for listening and see you next week.